Hi guys, welcome back to the Big Sew Along. I'm Ginny, and today I also want to say welcome to all of my new subscribers. Many of you, I'm gonna say most of you, new subscribers in the last week came over to my channel from Jen from Today in Jen's Sewing Room, who gave me like the most astounding shout out in her Friday Sews video. So I just wanted to say thank you to Jen. As always, I adore her. I think she's a really cool lady. I love watching her videos, and I love that she was so kind to me. And also I want to thank you to everybody who came over from Jen's channel. Thank you for coming, and I hope you like it here, and I hope you stick around. To everybody else, welcome back. I'm, as always, thrilled to have you. Really glad that anyone actually wants to take the time to spend a little bit of time watching me yammer on about sewing. It's actually incredible. So, today we are sewing Vogue 1585, which is the one I'm wearing right now. I'll show you a picture here. I also will show you a picture of the cover. I think I have a picture of the line drawing as well, which is helpful for this. Let's go over it. This is a Vogue pattern, so it's got your standard Vogue sizing, extra small through double XL, bust 29 and a half to 48, waist 22 to 41 and a half, hip 31 and a half to 50. This is rated as an easy pattern. We'll go over my issues with that later. Its description is women's dress, loose fitting pullover dress, has gathers, pockets, and shaped hemline. Wrong side of fabric may show. Fabrics they recommend are seersucker, rayon, challis, crepe de chine, unsuitable for obvious diagonals. This dress requires 60-inch wide fabric. For the extra small, you are going to need 4 7/8 yards, and for the double XL, also 4 7/8. So essentially 5 yards of fabric. I would like to say that that was inaccurate, but it turns out that it's not. I probably had a little bit left over, but I did shorten my dress 4 inches. And I don't know if you can see in the picture of myself up here, I think actually that I probably could have just shortened it 2 inches. And if I make it again, I will bring it back down another 2 inches. So this dress is essentially 2 panels that are exactly the same. The front panel and a back panel. The neckline is the same. The armholes are the same. The front detail, the back detail, it's all the same. Now, I said I have issues once again with something being easy. There is nothing particularly difficult about this pattern. However, they choose to make it a bit more difficult by, number one, giving you instructions for doing all those seams with a French seam. And that means putting a side seam pocket in a French seam. And it also means, I don't know if you can see this here. I'm going to stand up for a second. If I actually, yeah, you can't see it there. If I show you the side of this side actually gets pushed in. But before it gets pushed in, it is a square. And they are asking you to do a French seam around a square corner. So, yeah, I mean, is a French seam a really difficult thing to do? No. But once again, it's one of those things that you can do, and if you don't do it well, it doesn't look nice at all. So there's that issue. Once again, the inseam pocket to me just needs to be a plain old inseam pocket. I don't know what it is with this like notched out front. I mean, it's not that it's the pocket they want you to do is almost exactly the same as the one we did in Marcy Tilton's top from last week. it's more complicated than it needs to be. And once again, because of the way this dress hangs, you are never ever gonna see the top of that pocket. So in my opinion, that is a waste of energy. The other thing that they want you to do is, and to see if you can see this, in this section here, you have a big, like a circle that gets gathered up, and it's an inset into the front of the dress with a bias, a wide bias tape that goes around the top that you see. The instructions tell you to bind that seam allowance on the back side. So, you can do that. And in fact, in some fabrics you may want to. However, the fabrics that they've given you for this, I feel like that's unnecessary. You may in fact see the back side of that seam, but I would say that it's not very likely in this particular dress. Also, I don't know, I'll show you the inside of mine here. That is mine not bound, so it's not really going to look any different. I have no problems with binding a seam. You guys may remember a few months ago we did Hong Kong finishes on our, gosh, what was that? I think that was a B-Man pattern. It was the Bridget Mann pattern, the hoodie. I'll link it for you below. In case you don't know how to do a Hong Kong finish on a seam, I'll show you in there, and you're welcome to do that on this. So here's the thing. Hong Kong finish and French seams are designer details, I would say. They are not necessarily difficult, but they are also not easy, particularly if you're not familiar with doing them. This dress, if you make it out of their suggested fabric of seersucker or rayon challis, or crepe de chine for that matter, you don't really need to do any of those things. Of course you can do if you feel like that adds something to your garment. However, that means that the dress is no longer easy, in my opinion. So there's that. For today, because of that, yeah, you guys, I don't know, I actually just got so frustrated when I read these directions that I almost didn't do this. I'm glad I did, because as it turns out, I really love this dress. I'm just frustrated that something so simple needed to be made complicated, in my opinion, solely for the sake of making it complicated. Now, again, I love a French seam as much as the next sewist, and I love a Hong Kong finish seam, but those need to bring something to the table to me in order to be spending my time on them, because every single seam you sew that way literally takes twice as much time as if you just sew it and serge it. So I guess it's up to you if that's where you want to put your time, or if it's a garment, like if it was a sheer garment, if I was making this out of organza or chiffon or even a georgette or something where I would see the serging like through my seams, that I would totally, I would absolutely be down with French seaming those. Anyways, okay, so at the end of the day, our tutorial is this dress, but it is not the way they have you make it. I made it my way, which in my opinion is easier. The other thing I was going to say about these directions is they have you sew this dress together, the front and the back together, and then they have you put these giant gathered insets in, which to my mind is completely backwards. I really do not want to wrangle 5 yards of fabric around my sewing machine to get these gathers in, unless I absolutely have to. And you do not absolutely have to. In my opinion, it makes a lot more sense to construct the front, then construct the back, and then put them together like a normal person would. So, not to be too harsh or anything. Anyway, so you can see I was a little frustrated. So, let's get on with it. I am going to go over to our tutorial here, and then we'll come back and we have a couple more comments. So here's the bodice of our dress. I'm never going to get this whole thing in the screen, so let me see if I can get it a little better anyway. But you can see this is our curved front or back opening. And we're just going to take our wide bias piece, the long one, and we're going to pin it raw edge to raw edge all the way around this curve. Now I have already stay stitched this curve, and in order to keep my bias tape as even as possible, I have also stay stitched both sides, both edges of my wide bias tape. So you won't be able to see it on here, but this side and this side I stay stitched before I folded it and pressed it. Now we're just going to put this in like this, and you're going to see as I go along, I want this raw edge to match up. You're going to get some funky curling in here, and that is fine. Just make sure your edges are matching. So once we have this piece pinned in, this is our bias strip, we're just going to go ahead and baste that in all the way around. And you're going to do that on the front and the back. They're exactly the same. Then we're going to take this, which is piece number 6, and we're going to open it out. This is the big circle piece that goes in the middle. And you will see on the back side, you'll have a dot over here on this end, and then one way over here, you know, on this exact same spot on the other side. So we're going to run 2 rows of gathering stitches between those 2 dots, and you're going to do that on both of the circle pieces that go in the front. Once we have our circular panel gathered up and pinned on, it's going to look like this. If this is the wrong side of our panel, this is the wrong side of our bodice, this is the opening here. Just be aware that on the sides over here, you should have a little dot right about here where you started your gathering. From this point down on both sides, there should be no gathering in your circle panel. It should just be flat against the main panel, the main body piece. Now all we're going to do is we're going to go in and stitch this down with our 5/8 inch seam allowance. I would stitch this again, like I said before, with the gathered side up so that you can see what's going on, and that way you can control any gathers that are getting pushed out of place. They tell us to then bind this edge with a seam binding, which I am not going to do. I think that that is going to make this seam way too bulky, and it's really not necessary. I am just going to serge this whole section off, and then we'll press from the other side. If you don't have a serger, you can just as easily use a zigzag to finish this, or even pinking shears. The truth is that this whole edge on both pieces, it's almost a circle, so most of this is going to be on the bias of some sort, so it's not going to get a lot of fraying anyway. So I am not binding my edge, I'm just going to sew it and serge it. And then we're going to do the exact same thing to the other. And just before I pin my second half together, this is the bodice. It's upside down, obviously. These are the shoulders. This is our circular opening here. I just want to be sure you guys know that this big bias piece that we based it on earlier, that's curling up like this, gets laid flat towards the top of the dress. And then your circular panel is going to go in here. And you guys have seen me do this before. This is going to get gathered up, but the important thing is that this bias, this wide bias strip that we basted in, should be laying towards the top. The folded edge should be going towards the top of your dress. So it will be sandwiched between your circular panel and your maiden body panel. So we're going to make this fold over inseam pocket, just a regular inseam pocket. And the way I did that is, this is a full piece. You'll see right here in the center is a fold line, and I just cut it apart on that fold line. And then I cut 4 of these, 2 pairs right sides together, so like this, and then 2 more. Now you do need to make these marks, the dots and the notch, and then we're just going to take that piece. This is the front of my garment and one of the sides, and we're just going to match up the notch right here. And we're going to match up the dots, which you can't see on my fabric, but they're right here and right here. And then we're going to sew this together from the one dot to the other dot at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then we are going to press this pocket out this way so that the seam allowance is flat there. And we're going to do that 4 times. So 2 times on the front, 2 times on the back. So we're all pinned and ready to sew our pockets on here, but just so you know, I forgot to say, pin your pockets on and sew from this dot to this dot with a 3/8 inch seam allowance, and then finish the edge of your fabric just across the top of the pocket here. The instructions tell us to sew this together with French seams, which we can do, but because we have this side seam over here, we have this over here and then a corner and a pocket, it does not really make much sense to me to use that method unless you're using a really sheer fabric. So we're going to place our pieces right sides together. We're going to push our fabric for our pockets up and out of the way. This is a big piece, so I'm just going to be able to show you the one side, but it's pretty easy to see. So I have understitched the pocket, but only on the side that I have established as the front, not on the back side. So here we go. We're just going to place these right sides together. Now, all we need to do is, this is our underarm right here, this little funky corner. That's the end of our underarm and the beginning of our side seam. So let's just make sure that matches there. So we're going to start up here. We're going to sew our shoulder seams with our 5/8 inch seam allowance. We're going to finish those seams and press them towards the back. Then we're going to start down here at this little angle. We're going to sew down here. We're going to pivot and go all the way around our pocket. And then we're going to pivot again and go off to the side, pivot again, and go straight down this way, straight to the hem. And then you're going to finish all of those edges. I forgot to say, however, that I have already finished the edges on my pocket, because trying to finish those with a serger or something after you put them in is just too difficult, and I always end up cutting something. So when you go to do this, you'll finish this, you'll finish from here to here, and from here to here, and then you'll finish it off from here to here. And you're going to press all those seams either open or to the back, just depending on how you sewed your seams, how you finish your edges. Now the instructions tell us to put our armhole binding on before we do the side seams. We didn't do that, and this armhole comes to a point at the bottom here. So I've pinned my binding around my armhole, and this is the underarm right here. This pin is right exactly where my seam is, so I am going to cut parallel to that about 1/2 inch, whatever seam allowance you want to use, away, and it's going to be at an angle like that. Now I'm going to take mine off so you guys can see, but you don't have to take the whole thing off. So after we clip those corners, or that end, our bias tape looks like this at the end. So we're going to open these out and put them right sides together. I'm going to put those 2 clipped ends right sides together, and we're going to sew those with whatever our seam allowance was. Mine is about 1/2 inch, so right here. And then we're just going to put this back on our armhole and sew it down on the right side. You're going to understitch it and then press it all to the inside and stitch it down close to that folded edge. So just a quick picture of what that underarm bias should look like. So this is what it looks like when we've sewn both of the ends together. It'll look like that. And then you're going to trim that seam and maybe clip that tip, and then just fold it to the inside, you know, so wrong sides of your fabric are together. And there you have your bias, and that should fit neatly into your underarm where it comes to a little point. Then you're going to do your neck binding and your hem as you normally would. This also has on the front here, well, on the side actually, this is our pocket, and this is the corner right here. Now the instructions tell us to use a weight, which I just don't have. If you have a weight, that would be great, but I don't have one. I am going to use a heavy-ish button. And we're actually just going to push that little corner in to make like a little pocket that will hold our button. I'm going to push it down just enough to cover that button. And then I'm going to reach into the inside and grab that corner with the button and pull it to the right side, or to the wrong side. I hope that made sense. So this is our corner, and this is our button, our pocket. This is our button right here, or weight, whatever you're using. Now we're just going to take and stitch around this button by hand. If you don't want to do that, you can just do a straight stitch from right across here. But you want to be sure you stop at this seam here so you don't go into your pocket. And also you want to be sure that you're not going to catch that button with your presser foot. So give yourself enough room if you're going to do it like that. I am just going to do mine by hand, and I'm just going to stitch a circle right around that button. And what that's going to do is when we turn it to the right side, that's going to help hold this side down. It's going to pull it down a little bit. Again, you can see in the picture like this right here. It's just going to weight that edge down a little bit. Okay, so the things I changed. I really didn't change anything about this dress. I will say that in one of these pictures you can see the armhole comes pretty low. Like this comes to the bottom of my bra band. I didn't bother like putting a tank top or anything on this today because I'm just at home. But obviously I wouldn't want my pink banana bra hanging out if I was going outside of the house. So you may want to check that. The other thing is I shortened my dress 4 inches, but I shortened it only from the skirt portion, not from the top. And you guys can see that this, I don't know if you actually can see, this is where the waist is on this, the seam line for, so it's only about an inch below the bottom of my bust. Now I am high-waisted and I am very short-waisted, so that's part of it. But I just wanted to point that out because if you happen to be taller or if you have a longer torso, you may want to check the length of this to be sure that it is actually the length you want it to be. It might be a bit on the short side. Yeah, so when I shortened the skirt of this, there are dots on, or notches. It's a mark of some sort on the center panel, like the circle part, and then on the dress that coordinate. They're a few inches above the hem. I did my shortening below that dot so that I knew that those dots would still match up when I went to put it together. However, the long bias strip that goes in between the two will not match up, and it doesn't really, there's nothing really to match up. It just lays flat, so you can just put it on and cut off the excess. You want to be sure that the circle and the curved dress panel do match up, so just make sure that you're keeping those marks in place if you're going to shorten or lengthen the skirt on this one. Yeah, so as I said, I assembled the whole front first and then the whole back, and then I sewed them together. That just made more sense to me. In retrospect, I see their point in putting the bias binding on the armhole ahead of time. But once again, the instructions tell you to put the bias binding on, and then the seam that comes up to a bias binding is supposed to be a French seam. So you've got a bias binding on there that you're going to then sew 2 times over. So that's like, I don't know, 16 layers of fabric in one spot. Can you get around that? Yes, absolutely you can. But once again, I just want to point out that those are the small details that make this not an easy pattern if you follow those directions. Seriously, I'm not going to complain about it anymore. Okay, I also chose to make these pockets in a more simple way, which is just to make them regular inseam pockets, and that was the tutorial that you saw here. Those are, again, not the directions that they have in the pattern itself. Okay, I think that I got everything out that I wanted to say. I apologize. I feel like I sound really cranky in this video, and I was just frustrated because this is the second Vogue pattern in a row that I feel like has just really given us directions that didn't need to be nearly as complicated as they were. And so, yeah, frustration set in. Okay, speaking of directions, however, I do have good news on that front, and that is Linda Lee from the Sewing Workshop, I think last week, or maybe the week before, released a new pattern called the Coco Blouse. I watched her video that week. I usually do watch hers on, I think she's on Tuesdays. Anyways, I watched that, and I listened to her talk about it, and she said it is, in fact, an exact replica of this old pattern called the Wonton Blouse. I'm going to put a picture of it up here for you guys. But the good news is, I love Linda Lee's patterns. The Sewing Workshop patterns are just really, really good. The directions are amazing. I love sewing her patterns. The good news is, I already have this pattern in the paper version when it was called the Wonton Blouse ages and ages ago. This was copyright 2003, so it's been a little while. Anyways, I have wanted to sew this forever, and I haven't done it. And I didn't want to do it as a sew-along because I didn't think anybody would be able to get the pattern. And now I can do it because everybody can get the pattern. The Coco Blouse is this blouse exactly, and it is a download pattern only. And if you haven't sewn any of the patterns from the Sewing Workshop before, you're definitely going to want to check in with us on this sew-along. I think it's going to be really good. I have added this to the queue. Next week, we will be sewing Simplicity 9139, which is this really cute sort of caftan-y kind of dress. I will list all of those patterns for our upcoming sew-alongs in the information space below this post, and also over on our Facebook page, which I will also link below. And I think that's it. I did not get a Friday Sews done last week, but I've been sewing with my friend Marsha the last couple of Tuesdays, and I've been working on something really cool, so hopefully I will get that video done for you this week, and we'll have a Friday Sews to show some stuff off. Until then, thanks so much for stopping by. Thanks again to all my new subscribers, as well as all of my previous subscribers. I appreciate every one of you. Have a great week, happy sewing, and we'll see you soon.